So last month we looked through the first 9 verses of Joshua chapter 1, learning on how to be strong and courageous. Tonight we're going to be continuing in that series through the book of Joshua. We're going to be looking at Joshua chapter 1, verses 10 through 18. So this is going to be the second half to the first chapter. I invite you to join me as we look at that passage tonight. So again, if you'd like to turn your Bibles with me, it is Joshua chapter 1, and we're going to be starting in verse 10, going through verse 18, which says, "So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your supplies ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you. The Lord your God is giving you the rest and has granted you this land. Your wives, your children, and your livestock may stay in the land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan. But all your fighting men, fully armed, must cross over ahead of your brothers. You are to help your brothers until the Lord gives them rest, as he has done for you, and until they too have taken possession of the land that the Lord your God has given them. After that, you may go back and occupy your own land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you east of the Jordan toward the sunrise." Verse 16, "Then they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey your words, whatever you may command them, we will put to death. Only be strong and courageous." So just to do a little bit of review of what we already have seen from the first 9 verses of chapter 1 is that Moses, the previous leader of the Israelites, is dead. You see, he had sinned against the Lord back in Numbers chapter 20, where we learn about how since he sinned against God, that he would not be allowed to go into the promised land, the land that the Israelites were hoping to go to even 40 years prior. See, the Israelites sent out 12 spies. This was 40 years ago, the initial time that they were going to go into the promised land. Moses sent 12 spies, one from each tribe, to go into the land to examine it, to take a look of what to expect. The 12 tribes then came back. 10 of the spies said, no, we can't go there. They're full of giants and we will be overtaken. But 2 spies said, it's okay, God will be with us, so we can go in. Well, they decided to not go into the promised land at that time. And so then God said, you'll wander around for 40 years. And so now the wandering is over and it's time to go to the land that God had promised them. Moses is dead now, and Joshua is going to be taking over for Moses. Joshua was not randomly selected. He's been in training for all this time. In fact, he was one of the 12 spies. He was actually one of the 2 spies that said we should go to the promised land. It was him and Caleb who said that we should go, that had faith in God to protect them during this time. But obviously we've seen that the people of Israel said, no, we don't want to go. We don't want to risk this. We'll be overrun. Let's not go in. And so they wandered around for 40 years. Joshua was Moses' assistant during this time. He was the second in command. And just like what Pastor Ken had did with Paul and myself for the last few years, that's what Joshua was doing under Moses. He was getting that education, getting that training for 40 years, which between you and me, I think that's a fantastic education, a fantastic mentorship. All right, now getting into the main text for tonight, we're looking at Joshua chapter 1, verses 10 through 18. In the first two verses, verses 10 through 11, Joshua goes to his officers. This is kind of like the chiefs. It's kind of like the second in command. So like if Joshua was the general, he's going to his officers. These are kind of like the colonels, the majors, kind of like a few ranks down. They're going to go and get their armies prepped and ready to go to cross over the Jordan River. And he tells them that in 3 days, we will cross the Jordan River. Joshua is saying, get yourself ready. In 3 days, we will cross. This is it. 40 years that we've been wandering around. Today, in 3 days, we will go. So get yourself ready and we will head out. Now, these are not just orders that Joshua just randomly decided to do. God gave him these orders. When Joshua said, we will cross, this is not a order that's like, oh yeah, we're going to cross. It's not the confidence in the men, it's confidence in God that he will protect them, that they will cross the Jordan River. You know, in a way, this scene kind of takes me back to when George Washington took the Continental Army across the Delaware. It was that famous Christmas voyage across the Delaware River to Trenton. See, the colonial army crossed the Jordan River on Christmas night in order to attack the Hessian army on the morning after Christmas. I kind of had a feeling that Joshua might have had like that same type of mentality with George Washington, the general. We will cross this river. But with Joshua, obviously he had a lot of confidence coming from the Lord. After all, he just had a conversation with God where he told Joshua to be strong and courageous. In fact, he even told him 3 times over the course of 9 verses. All right, so again, those were the officers' orders. Again, so that's kind of like the colonels, the majors, kind of like, or lieutenant colonels. Like those are to like his staff, his officers. But he also has some separate orders. He has some tribe orders. And we take a look at that and we see this in verses 12 through 15. He has specific orders for 2.5 tribes. I know that might seem a little interesting, 2.5 tribes. So these orders are for the full tribe of Reuben, the Reubenites, for the full tribe of Gad, or the Gadites, and then the half tribe of Manasseh. Now, Manasseh, that one's kind of interesting because he and Ephraim are not sons of Jacob. Jacob was their grandfather, but their father, Manasseh, and Ephraim, their father, was Joseph. So in a way, Joseph himself didn't get any land in the promised land. Instead, it was his sons who got land. So in a way, Joseph got double portion. And so his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, got the land instead. Now, what's so unique about these orders with these 2.5 tribes is that these 2.5 tribes didn't really have any land in the promised land. In fact, we understand, we get more clarity if we look at Numbers 32. You see, in Numbers 32, we see that these 2.5 tribes wanted to have land east of the Jordan River. Now, during this time, this was really unique. So this was like coming to like the end of the 40 years. Like I've talked about before, with the beginning of the 40 years, just before that, the 12 spies came back, and the 10 of the 12 said, let's not go in. We don't want to go in. We're not going to be protected. We'll not survive. And so they had to wander around for 40 years. But also with that, all those who were 20 years old or older will not see the promised land. See, those people most likely grew up in Egypt. They understood what happened in Egypt. But it's going to be the next generation that will go to the promised land. Those who were from Egypt will not see the promised land. All those who were 20 years old or older will not see the promised land. So again, that was right before the 40 years of the sorry, right before the 40 years of wandering. And you can find more details of that in Numbers 13 and 14. But then looking at Numbers 32, we see that these 2.5 tribes wanted to have land east of the Jordan River. Now, what's so unique is that this is not a part of the promised land. The promised land was on the west side of the Jordan. And so Moses was a little frustrated with this. He's saying, guys, don't you remember what happened like 40 years ago? This was the same problem. Like, you guys are just wanting to have this land. You're not wanting to go into the land that God promised us. You're just doing what you want to do. And also, if you're going to be here and all the other tribes are going to cross the river, then we're going to have less people to attack. Are you just going to sit here and like all of us just die away? Well, the reason for these 2.5 tribes wanting to keep the land east of the Jordan River was because this was really good land for their livestock. All right. So as farmers, people might want to have really good land. They want to make sure that their livestock has good grass to eat, so they can be healthy and like eventually like have a trade. In fact, that's one of the 3 reasons why people would want certain land. The 3 reasons are protection, so like military standard, water, you need water to survive, and trade, or like you need to have a job. You got to be able to like have all 3 of those to have a successful area. And the 2.5 tribes, they said, hey, we like this land. We wanted to stay here. It's not that we don't want to go over. We just like this land. And so then these 2.5 tribes talked with Moses and said, hey, we will fight with you, and we will fight with you. We will be with you to the end if we can have this land. Now, really quick here, I just want to show a map just to help out illustrate what I'm talking about here. Like sometimes like talking with words might be a little bit complicated. So if you're like me, sometimes a picture can sometimes help a little bit. So really quick here. All right. So the Israelites are around this area. If you can follow my cursor, it's like a little green cursor. So this big blue, light blue area here, this is the Mediterranean Sea. Right here, this is the Dead Sea, which is 10 times saltier than the ocean. This is the Sea of Galilee. So this is where like Jesus did a lot of the miracles in his missionary journey. And so this area right here, this black line, that's the Jordan River. So the Israelites are kind of like around maybe this area before they're going to cross. And so you can see that we got the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. So Manasseh, they actually have 2 portions. So one half wanted here, and the other half wanted to actually cross the Jordan River. That's why there is a half tribe. Half of the tribe said, hey, we like this land. We want to stay here. This is going to be good for us. The other tribe of Manasseh said, no, let's cross the Jordan River. That's the promised land. We're good with that. So that's why there's some splits between the half tribe of Manasseh. So this part here, the part that's west of the Jordan River, that's actually part of the promised land. This is the land that God had promised them. But over here, this is where Reuben, the tribe of Reuben, tribe of Gad, half tribe of Manasseh wanted to stay because it was a good area for their livestock. And they agreed that if they get to have that land, then they will fight with the rest of Israel. And once everything is all done, once everything is all taken care of, then they'll be able to go back to their land east of the Jordan River. All right, so I'm going to stop that share. I hope that as at least helped out a little bit in understanding the uniqueness of this situation. So Joshua comes to these tribes to say, all right, remember that agreement you had with Moses, that covenant? Well, today's the day. I'm going to need your armies. I'm going to need your fighting men to come and join me, cross the Jordan River and fight. Today's that day. Today's the day to get ready so we can all go fight. So again, so in the first two verses, 10 and 11, we see the officers' orders. And then through 12 to 15, we see the tribes' orders. And then finally, in the last three verses, 16 through 18, we see the response to these orders. So once Joshua gave these orders, and these are both from the officers and the 2.5 tribes, who then said, we will fight with you. We are going to be with you. We will stick to our agreements. And this is a very, very strong, this is a pledge that they will fight with Joshua. And especially with a new leader, with Moses being in command for so long, like maybe there might have been some type of like hesitancy with a new leader, like with football season about to start up. I've actually looked at this morning. There have been some like hesitancy over some coaches for some of the teams. There are some coaches coming in who are brand new to the team, and they might have a different style. And even some of the players are saying like, well, I don't know about this guy. Is it going to work? I'm not sure. But we see these people, these officers, these 2.5 tribes, they said, we will follow you. We are loyal to you, Joshua. They said, we will follow you. We will obey you. Which, especially for a brand new commander, that is amazing. So not only does Joshua have God giving him confidence, giving him the knowledge that, hey, God will be with him everywhere he goes. And even in the beginning part of this chapter, God even says that you will win every battle. That we see this in verse 5, that no one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. So Joshua is already going to win the battle no matter what. So he is being loyal to God. He's saying, okay, we're going to go fight today. We're going to do this and we will win. And all of his men are saying, we are with you, that we trust you. We will obey you. In fact, they even close with using the same phrase that God even said. Be strong and courageous. So that must have been maybe a little bit of a sign that to Joshua, that's like, hey, God said, be strong and courageous. And these men here are also saying the same thing, be strong and courageous. That must have been an extra confidence boost for Joshua. With our application tonight, it's very simple, is that everyone is needed in ministry. In following God, everyone is needed. See, it's not just a pastor's job to run the church. Like, personally, by myself, I can already say that it would be tough for me to handle absolutely everything. So this be a time to thank you for all you who serve at the church, whether if it's at the church that meets in the morning or the church in the afternoon. It helps the leader. It helps the pastor. Everyone who's helping Joshua, it helps him. Whether if it's being a janitor, cleaning up like the bathrooms, that's needed in ministry. That's important. How Rachel even passes out the little handouts on Sundays. That's a great ministry. Helping people, making sure that they have the notes in hand during the service. Now, I understand we're not exactly the biggest church like in the country, But there are some churches that are so big that they actually have people who help with parking. Those like the traffic guards or the traffic guides or those people, like you might see them with like yellow vests just to help with parking, just making sure that everyone stays safe in the parking lot. Those people are needed. It's a helpful ministry. Everyone is needed. So no one can say, well, I'm not really important. I don't really help out with anything. I just do something small. No, doesn't matter what the role is. Every role is important. As Joshua needed everyone as they crossed the Jordan River, the church also needs everyone. Let us pray.